Hello and welcome to Art and Self. I'm Cindy Ingram, your host and the founder of Art Class Curator, the Curated Connections Library, and the Art and Self Connection Circle. This is a podcast where we experience the range and depth of what it means to be human, seen through our connections and conversations about works of art. These art conversations are here to show you that art is here for you as a catalyst, a challenger, a coach, and a comfort. Before we get started, take a moment to fill up your lungs with a deep breath. Connect with your body and your mind and your spirit, and get ready to discover what art has to show you. I am so excited to welcome Annette Stahl to the podcast. Welcome, Annette.
Hello, thank you.
All right, so Annette, why don't you introduce yourselves to our listeners?
I am Annette Stahl, and I have a company called A Design Discovery. I have designed and drafted over 400 homes. I do consulting and coaching and design and real estate. And what I have learned over the last decade and a half is that our space supports how we live. And when we align it, everything flows. And when we get out of alignment, life gets very chaotic and overwhelming. So I'm excited to be here because I love art and I really promote local artists and making sure that we don't use the masses. The energy we bring in the home is the energy it will have. And so I am super excited to be here.
Awesome. So at the end, I'll ask you a little bit more about, the services you provide in case anybody is just really intrigued by your discussion. We'll talk about that and how to reach you at the end. And we'll also put any links we mention in the show notes. But for us to get started, I have 5 works of art for you to look at. I had 4, but like 5 minutes before we started talking, I was going to try to find a title for one of them. I failed, but I found another one by the same artist, and I was just my curiosity was piqued. So I'm going to show you these artworks on the screen, and then I would like you to choose one that really captivates you. Choose one that speaks to your heart, not intellectually thinking, oh, I think there's some things I could say about this, but which one gives you that sort of visceral reaction of, ooh, I want to look at that a little bit more.
So we're going for feel. Which one ignites my feels?
Okay. Yeah, that's what we're going for. Okay, so let me share my screen. We were just talking before we started. Both of us have dogs that are being extra noisy today. So you might hear dogs in the background, and we're just going to go with it because that's real life. I did kick my dog out because he was snoring really loud. But all right, so here's our first one. This one is called Comfort Zone by, of course I don't have the titles on the screen. Eric Johansson, I believe, actually. I'm going to take this off so that I can actually look at the titles. Oh, I was right. I was all of a sudden thought that Eric was wrong. Okay. Comfort Zone by Eric Johansson. And then I don't have a title for this one, but the artist is named Swoon. She is a street artist. And then another one by the artist Swoon. And then we have The Opening by Aaliyah Chapin. And I might be saying her last name wrong. And then our last one is The Mysterious Garden by Margaret MacDonald McIntosh. So
okay, well, I'm called to Margaret McIntosh's The Mysterious Garden.
Awesome. Last one. Okay. This one I just added in the last hour as well. I had 4 different ones and I was like, changing my mind. Cool. All right. So before we get started talking about it, tell us what drew you into it. What made you want to look at this one more?
It was the feel. So it's like this flow and the face. It was honestly, I didn't look too close at any of them. I just went with what felt called to. So my intuition just was really curious, and it has so much open space and yet so much going on at the same time that the both and was intriguing to me. Awesome. The color was also amazing. So the color definitely resonated with me. The blues and the purples and the pinks.
Excellent. Do you want to start at the description for our listeners? And listeners, you can find this artwork in the show notes, but please do not pull it up while you're driving.
So the first thing I notice about this is it's almost like a bubble. Mm-hmm. So it's like this soft flowing woman, and you don't know if it's like her hair or a veil, but it's like she's in this bubble. And then when you look behind her, it's like, is that stained glass? But there's faces all along the top. And at first, they're evenly spaced. And then all of a sudden, they get super close and then they go back to evenly spaced. And
Yeah.
it almost does as if they have wings under them.
Mm. Yeah, so the color palette is mostly like a purpley blue, like a cool blue, and it's not very saturated. It's really sort of kind of washed out with some grays and white, and then little touches of pink and little touches of a more warm purple. Um,
And the
and
bottom, she's really grounded on the ground. Like it looks almost like concrete because it's kind of that
yeah.
concrete color. That's what's giving it its a luminous and kind of puffiness. And her
Mm-hmm.
face looks completely like almost like that sleep serene face, like that, like ooh, like that.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right. So I think that's a pretty good description. In between each of the faces in the background, and they're all pretty similar. There's some differences, which we can talk about too. But there is um, the spaces between the faces. To me, I'm always viewing them as columns, but there's sort of this vertical lines um, interspersed in between the faces.
They do look almost like columns. It's almost as if she's in like a church or synagogue or some kind
Mhm.
of old type of structure where everything had the columns and the piers.
Yeah, and it does feel like a very sacred space.
Yeah.
All right. So, what is calling you to discuss first?
I'm curious about the faces. So I don't know if it's calling me, but I am curious because there's one face that's in between two columns. And
Hmm.
there's a blue bubble on her, and her eyes are different. It's like all the rest of them have closed eyes, and her eyes are open.
Yeah, and she almost has like really dramatic eyelashes or eye makeup,
I
or
couldn't, yeah, I couldn't
can you
tell if
tell?
it was, yeah, I couldn't
Wish I could
tell.
zoom in on that. I wonder if I can.
Um,
Okay, so I've zoomed in the image, and what are you noticing about that one's face?
so it's interesting because most of the eyes are like I call them hooded, where the
Hmm.
eyelids are just, she might be able to see through just barely, but you're really in that relaxed state. And then the one that has the pink on it and is in between two faces is like awake.
Yeah.
Even look at the smiles, they're almost all the same, except for the
Yeah.
lips kind of go away on the one beside her. And I can't tell if those are wings below them or fish.
To me, they look like ties and like
Oh,
collared shirts.
oh, like feathers, maybe even.
Yeah, but now I'm seeing but now that you've mentioned it, if you look at one of them, the wings overlap her bubble. And
Yeah,
so that makes me think that it is wings too.
yeah. So
Or
that's, and
birds. Look at the one on the right.
oh, yeah, maybe it is
There's
bird.
beaks and eyes.
Yeah, see, that's why I thought they were fish because I was like, it's like they are alive, but you're right,
Yeah,
they're birds.
interesting. Okay, so what do you think these faces are? What do you think they mean? Why do you think they're there?
Well, and then there's flowers below the lips. Do you see that? So right below the
Yes.
lips, there's flowers, and but I don't understand the pink. So it's like out coming out of her crown chakra or the back of her head,
Hmm.
and it's on the one face that has the awakening.
Yeah.
So, and the title of the piece is Mysterious Garden, which would make sense that there's flowers and would make sense there are birds.
Hmm.
Um, Even so, look even at her dress, like right below her collar, there looks like there's a bird coming out of it. Like go down and then
Oh,
left. See that eye?
yeah, like right here.
Go, yep, and then go down below the blue one, and there's like a
Oh,
one.
yeah.
So I'm finding that really interesting as far as is it when we slow down and we connect with nature and we garden that we become awake because it's like asleep and it's all the
Hmm.
regiment of the kind of machine of building a
Hmm.
column, building a building, and then they get close together and it's like her movement went in and her eyes open. Or is that she is asleep and then she's awake in her dream, her mysterious garden dream? I don't know.
Oh, okay. So a couple theories that there is a that she is asleep and this is her dream, or that she is it is it a not rebellion is the wrong word, but so it's something contrasting against like the
It's like
industrialized cookie cutter
that's
type of world.
well, that's my question. Is it masculine, feminine? Is it
Mm,
systems versus gardening, like machine versus gardener? Because it's they're in columns as if a building was built, right?
yeah,
And a building has to have structure and straight. You wouldn't necessarily want a wall that was bowing out or in,
yeah.
right? And so it has this like structure. And then inside this structure is these birds that are coming up into this face. And then this blossom in the middle that's right below the lips. So it's interesting to me. And the eyes are changing depending on like where the blossoms are. So and the reason I think I was drawn to it is because it has all the geometric shapes and structure behind her, and yet she is this fluid bubble of lightness
Hmm.
against the contrast of the structure.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm gonna unzoom just so we can see the full scope of it. So
See
what
how
do you
she looks and flow.
how say that one more time?
She looks like a bubble, like so flowy.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like I want to be her.
I know.
Like, can I please just feel that sort of like comfort and
Yeah, it's like
lightness
she's in
and
a womb. Look
yeah.
at her, like, it's like that circular womb, like she's just flowing. And like when you think of a baby in a womb, they're in all that water and it's just a flow,
Hmm.
right? There's obviously structure all around them.
Yeah, and we don't see her. We don't really see her physical body. We kind of see her shoulders and her chest, but then it sort of flows out to the left, and we can kind of see maybe like two lines that kind of represent the side of her dress or something. But it's not a very like natural way someone would stand. So she is not doesn't appear to be really standing on the ground. She's more floating. But
Yeah,
then that whole bubble is on the ground and is grounded.
yeah. I mean, literally, there's brown in the bottom.
Yeah. So I feel like
And
there's some sort of message here for me in my life. Uh, how to find peace or exist within myself peacefully despite the structures around me or
maybe the structures
something.
create the safety for us to flow and be in ourselves.
Mm,
If you think of a home, it allows us
yeah.
climate control. It doesn't matter what the weather is doing. It gives us that safe place to sit and paint and create and be ourselves, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, so I see that in here and I see the sacred space. It almost, yeah, it has that like stained glass type of look.
Yeah.
And to me, a safe space is not one where I'm being watched. And so all of these spaces, maybe it's causing a little bit of uneasiness for me. Thinking like if I'm imagining myself being her, um, she looks so peaceful and she looks lost in it. She doesn't necessarily look aware of all those faces. But to me, I'm like, oh, there's something uncomfortable about having all of those people
Well,
looking
so
at
all
me.
of those faces seem to be her faces. So
Oh,
I assumed they were her faces. They're all parts of her.
oh,
So there are parts of her just looking and knowing of her soul. Like it's like, we see you. Yeah, it's
Oh, I
maybe
love
her little
that.
girl part, maybe her, we see your soulful, amazing connectedness. We see you.
Yes. And they're like, are there even like her spirits or her guides or
Yeah, like to me, they feel like they're not, they don't look judging, they look noticing.
true? That's
They
true.
look like I'm just present with you. I see you, you know,
Hmm.
you're seen even as a form that's not solid, a form that isn't necessarily make sense.
I love that. So what do you make of the face that is different? If those are all parts of her, what
That's what's
is the
making me crazy because there's pink in it and her eyes are awake.
hmm
So what is that? So is that the I don't understand. So is that like you wake up once you start to bloom? Like whoa, because it's
uh-huh.
called the mysterious garden.
Yeah.
So that's what's making me a little nutty because we don't see the birds in that one because she's covering it. It's
Hmm.
really close. So like are there awake versions available between each face? And that's the only one waking up. There's one,
Mm.
two, three, four, five, six, seven faces that are asleep, one that's awake. Um, yeah, I don't know.
And the more I look at that face too, the more it looks like it's looking out at me.
Right.
The left, well, it's the face's right eye, but it's our left. Especially, you can kind of see the iris, and you can see more of the eye. The right one I don't see as clearly, but I feel like she's looking at me, and I feel like the expression on her mouth is a little more like it has a little more emotion to it.
Yeah, all the rest look tranquil. And you can see,
Uh-huh.
like, so the first face hardly has a flower. The second face hardly has a flower. Then you see the flower in the third face.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth face, the eyes are, so look at the eyes. Like the eyes are a little open in the first one, pretty closed in the second. That one, you can see the flower, but not as well as the one before. And then it almost looks like the next one, you only see the stem. And then you see her waking up.
Yeah. And even the features are drawn more, there's more shading, there's more like three-dimensionality to that face too. Like if you look at the
Right.
nose, it
That's what I
definitely
was
looks
gonna say.
more realistic than all the other. Like the one right immediately to the right of
Almost
that
fade out
face,
again.
yeah, you can barely even tell any of
Well,
the
they fade
features.
out even more the more you go right, because the next
Yeah.
one's even more faded out.
Oh. And she almost looks like the face that we're talking about, the one that the sort of awake face in the background. It it looks to me like it's not as it's maybe like a smirk.
Yeah, I would agree. It just
And
seems interesting because she's connected to that face versus the other faces she's really not touching.
yeah, it's the one
But
closest to her.
she is touching that one, and that one appears seemingly not in order because
Yeah.
that should be a blank space if you were going in the pattern that had been created before.
Hmm. Yeah. So still kind of a mystery.
And here's my question about the flowers. It looks like the
Yeah.
birds are bringing the flowers.
Mm.
Because if you look over where you can see the flower well, it looks like that's like the stem is in their feet.
Yeah.
And there, in that one, the feathers are in front of her. So the birds are in front of her and she's behind it.
Yeah, that part is confusing to me because it totally like messes up with my perception of space. I mean, it is
Yeah.
an overall flat artwork, but it in my head she's in front and they're behind. Um,
But her dress is flowing behind those birds.
yeah, that's
And so
confusing.
maybe that's the transpersonal. Like maybe she's more spirit or ghost than she is concrete.
Yeah. Okay.
I just
I
like the feel of the tranquility and the flow. Like it makes me want to flow. It makes
Hmm.
me want to move. It
Yeah.
makes me want to kind of close my eyes and feel the softness. It's really the softness,
Yeah.
right? It's feeling, I mean, even the feathers in front, it's just the softness versus the rigidity of the stone, or what would it be, the structure behind it?
Yeah, because it's seemingly hard, but what could be columns, they're either stained glass, they're like marble columns. The ground is very much like looks like cement or
Yeah,
dirt or
everything
but
looks hard except for her and the birds.
yeah.
And so it's just like, even in the hardest of the worlds, you can be soft and you can
Hmm.
float, right?
Yeah. And that really connects me to a lot of when I've talked with you about your work and about your sort of your focus on breath and meditation and different things like that. Can you talk about how this painting? Well, is this a painting? Actually, I'm not 100% sure this is technically called a painting. I'll find that out before I post this, and we'll let you know. I think it might be a print, but anyway,
It
that's neither here
really.
nor there. Tell us how this connects to the work that you do.
So, we as a world are very much in our heads a lot, which is probably why I picked so many heads, huh? So, one of the ways that we can come down into our body is by feeling and breathing. So, really, that deep belly breath, like you're filling a vase, and that full exhale to let it all out and let everything out and become present with right where we are,
Hmm.
whatever that is. So, I love the faces, they just are noticing without judgment, just noticing. And I love that feel. So, I always talk to people like, if they were choosing art for a space, how does this make you feel?
Hmm.
Every space you create, you want to think about, how do you want it to feel? How do you want it to flow? How do you want it to function? And so for me, this has a lot of flow and a lot of feel for, the flowiness of it. So I
Hmm.
like that.
How has really doing this work of breath and flow impacted you in your life?
It's shifted to follow my heart instead of do what people want. So I am a chronic people pleaser. It's probably why I noticed their expressions. And so I built successful, well, I'm on my seventh business. I build successful businesses and sell them, but I sell them because they're not me. They make lots
Yeah.
of money, but they're sucking my soul. So I
Yeah.
sell them to someone else. And so for me, that breath and coming and really following my intuition, coming into my body, feeling the sensations in my body of, does this feel in alignment of being healthy and being what I need in this moment, has shifted in order for me to help people. Right now, it seems like all my clients right now are grieving. I lost a soulmate, and so I've went through figuring out how to get through that tunnel of grief. And almost all of my people are figuring out, how do they create space for them, because they're no longer in us. They've either lost a
Hmm.
child or they've lost a spouse. Um, and we forget that we co-create in every moment.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, when it's just us, like, what does that feel like? What does that look like? What does that flow like? And we have to come back into our bodies and be willing to ask. And that's scary because we haven't been there alone for a really long time sometimes.
Yeah, I was talking with someone recently who was going through a divorce, and she's going through the same thing of like, oh, well, this is how I was told I should create my house by my spouse, but now that we're not together anymore, like, what do I even like? And it was this whole
Yeah.
like discovery of self.
Yeah, they don't even know. And so I talk to them about what juices your energy, what zaps your energy, right? Like there's things
Hmm.
for me when I'm in nature, I'm juiced. Like I feel so alive. Being around a lot of people is a zapper for me.
Hmm.
So when I create space, I talk about the same thing. Does this juice your energy or does it zap your energy? And people are sometimes surprised. They have, maybe something from a grandma and they're like, this, I hate this. I love my grandma, so I don't want to get rid of it. But I hate this thing. And I was like, okay, so what can we do to honor her and allow it to leave our space? I always say, if you don't love it enough to dust it, because I hate dusting, it shouldn't be your space. An open space is kind of what she's showing here. When we open space, it allows flow. If there is
Hmm.
something in every crevice and we're like, we're going to make a change, the odds of change are going to be a lot harder because you're going against the current.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the space in this, and that was one of the first things that you said when you said that this one is what drew you in. It was the space of it. Um, and I love that because I've been in some houses that it's just like, oh, this is too much. There's furniture everywhere, and then I just feel like I can't even breathe. Um, so
Yeah, one
I
of
love it.
them, her daughter has been gone 4 years, and died at 16. So
Mm,
that's a hard one. And so she's gotten a new home now, and we're talking about how we honor her daughter, right? And she's had her daughter in the entry of her home. And in this home, I was like, well, what would happen if we put a mirror in the entry and it reflected her picture and things in this other room because she's still a part of your life. And do you want her front and center every second? Because she told you she wanted you to live and move on. So
mm,
she's a part, but do you want her to be drive everything, right? Like who's driving your car?
yeah.
And so the report back I call it report back from the field because I check in with people. I'm like, report back from the field. How was this experiment? Because everything can move, right? It's just a
Yeah.
thing. She's like, it has shifted so much because I honor her and I understand. I honor her and the time she is, and she's a part of my memories. And I am starting to go make friends. I'm starting to get out, right? She's not locked in this place where she couldn't even leave her house. So
Hmm.
I feel like that's growth, right? It's not, we don't have to get rid of things. We just have to figure out how to open the space. We
Yeah.
took and made a big photo book. So we have a whole wall, collage wall, and then the rest became a photo book instead of a whole entire house, right? Like it has its place. It's just the thing about grief that I explain to people is when somebody first dies, it's like you have a bookcase and the only book in there is the man you divorced or the man that died or the child that died. Like the bookcase doesn't have anything else because
Hmm.
everything stops in that moment. And then over time, we start adding books. We still honor them. We're the best part of them. Whatever they gave us, we live that. That's how they live on.
Yeah.
And we add books of life on our bookshelf. So
I love that. And I love the mirror. That mirror story was so powerful because I can imagine her standing in front of that mirror and she's she's now the focus and she can see herself. She can probably see her daughter in her
in a
just in her
reflection.
or in her appearance. And then she sees the stuff from her daughter, but she also sees who she is, who she was, and who she's becoming all in that one space. That's
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
really powerful. She's like, I look and her reflection's always in there. It's in the
Hmm.
back. She's got my back. I was like, yeah, because she's her religion and she believes in angels. So it's
Hmm.
whatever you believe in is what I coach to. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, so bringing it back to Margaret MacDonald McIntosh's, I always have a mouthful saying the name. I did look it up. It's ink and watercolor on vellum. So
Ooh.
that is probably what we're seeing with like the bubbliness of it and like the um, like
It
now
felt
that I
like
know that,
watercolor. It totally
yeah,
felt like watercolor somewhere. So
yeah, and there are parts that doesn't even look like the color kind of um, It was just sort of beaded on top, and so I'm kind of, now that I know the supplies, I can kind of see how that would work. But so looking at the painting again, now that I can officially call it a painting, um, what else are you noticing?
It's just the flow, it's like her body, there's an absence where her body was. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously it's not a natural stance, so it's almost a dance. So it feels
Mm-hmm.
like this dance with openness, this dance with expansion. Like it's like she's expanded, right? Like she just let go, closed her eyes, and it all just expands. She's allowing whoever, I think those are parts of herself, watching herself,
Yeah.
maybe past selves, maybe future selves. Maybe that pink one is her current self.
Mm.
Um, and she's just allowing it.
Yeah. And it makes me think too, I have a bubble, as you know, and probably a lot of listeners know, I'm sure I've talked about my bubble before, but I like to keep people at a kind of a safe distance. But this bubble that she is in, it doesn't feel like it is trying to keep things out, if that makes sense. Like it feels really like inviting, and it feels like warm, and like you just want to like walk in. Walk. It's an inviting bubble
Yeah. So
rather than like a repelling bubble.
I don't see it that
You
way.
don't?
Like
Okay.
I feel like it's her private space. That's her private place.
Yeah.
Like for me to walk into it would violate her sacredity. So it feels so sacred.
Yeah.
Like this is her dance and her, you're right. It doesn't feel like it's steel. I mean, it feels like it's a bubble, but like it feels like when you blow bubbles and you put your finger on it and it pops. It feels like
Yeah.
if I tried to stick my hand in, it's soft enough to do it, but it would pop her bubble. Like she would leave the sacredity of whatever's she's experiencing in this moment.
Yeah. It's it's interesting because I do feel like if I were to stick my arm in there, which is this is weird, but like it just to me it feels like it would I imagine that it would feel like this is going to be weird, but like you're sticking your hand into your dryer after it's dried
Oh,
clothes,
warm.
but like the sheets are like really soft sheets, but almost like they don't exist. But it's like what it would be like if they were like light, airy sheets. So
I
maybe like I think maybe what I'm imagining is what it would feel like to be, not that I want to enter her space, but that if am in her, I think it's me being in her position, that the energy of repelling isn't necessarily present. I think she feels safe that no one will.
I would agree. I think she feels
Yeah.
safe, no one will. And if she was a coach, we'll pretend she's a coach. If she was a coach and was inviting someone into her womb, it would be so warm and comforting,
Yeah.
right? Like those warm sheets. I can see that.
Yeah.
Like she's like getting into her presence to be able to pull people in, but she's not going to repel anyone. She's just going to be her light. And if she wants to welcome people, she'll choose that or not choose that.
Yeah. I think that's what I was trying to get across. And I'm wondering, like, I'm thinking about my own life, and I'm like, do I ever in my life ever feel completely comfortable and safe like she seems to feel? And it makes me think I can't exactly think of that as a maybe this is a goal for me to feel that safe
That's
the way she
that's
feels.
interesting to me because that's one of the things I've been really battling with personally is feeling safe.
Yeah,
I cannot believe how unsafe I felt. And it's unsafe because of financial pressures, unsafe because I'm shifting some career things,
yeah,
unsafe. It's not like my true safety is being violated. Like I live in a safe home, I live in a safe place. And so I saw one of my healers who took me on a guided meditation and she does shiatsu. And she made me look at her in the eyes as she was telling
Oh,
me, you are safe. And I was like, I kept closing my eyes. And she's like, I know your brain knows, but your body doesn't because I have been abused. I was in a very abusive marriage where I had a gun to my head, like that cold metal. I was like having dreams about the cold metal in my head to my head. I was, and then, I've been in really unsafe situations. And so she was like, your brain knows, and you're now in the healing journey where your body needs help because our body, every cell in our body keeps us safe. So at
yeah.
any point we had an unsafe experience, our body remembers. There's a whole science book that says it's called, I think, the body knows or the body remembers. And
Hmm.
so it's all that we have to do through breathing. And so she's one of the teachers that have taught me a lot about breathing and bioenergy and bringing up. So you can actually create a energy bubble and you feel like your whole hands turn red and you do this deep breath. And that's what I did. So my soulmate had cancer, AML, leukemia. And so he would get really low blood pressure and I could make an energy bubble and put him in it and I could raise his blood pressure to
Wow.
normal. And so I had so much fun because I didn't know if I really believed in this stuff. I was like all certified and doing it, but I was like, I mean, I don't know. I
Been
just
there.
kind of thought it was kind of fun. Like, I would play around on the dog who seemed amused with it. Um, and so when I had all the machines of MD Anderson in Houston, I was so amazed that all it is creating energy between my fingers and then putting a body in it. It was just all it did was give his body cells energy, right? And so every one of our cells remembers anything that happened. And so right now it feels like she's just releasing all of that, like not my gig, right?
Hmm.
Like the cells in my body are just now my etheric field, that little energy field around us, like, and I'm just floating in it and playing in it like it's a pool.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, that's it feels. So I do have moments, and the crazy part is the moments I feel most safe are always in nature. I build homes from the ground up. I built this home I'm sitting in right now, and I still feel most safe in the trees.
So how do you bring that safety from nature into the house?
And that's why you'll see like a lot of my houses, like my personal house has trees all the way around it with all these windows.
Hmm.
And so energetically, I will bring it in by grounding or rooting. So I also use elements, so natural elements. So I find it interesting that this painting has so much water to it, right? And we've both been
Hmm.
talking about that. So water is all about flow and emotions. So you bring up the name of unsafe. I'm sure. So if you want to feel safe, you bring tons of grounding in. So that's clay pots and black slate floors. That's what starts grounding you in. Any kind of tree rooting, trees will root down. So those are the things you bring in.
Hmm.
And still, most of my traumas happened in homes, not outside. So it's like because I can't run and I have to find a door to get out, that's what makes it
Mm.
feel less safe for me. So you'll always see doors everywhere, and I always can see every door. Like it's very interesting how our body remembers.
Oh yeah. And I think it's interesting, I think about my first reaction to this, to the faces, is that I didn't feel safe with them until you described what you were seeing. All I saw them were they were threats, um, and they were judging. Yeah, they were not like this. And it's interesting to study your reactions to works of art, because that sort of initial feeling that you get, there's usually some sort of lesson in that. There's usually some sort of like, oh, where is my nervous system being triggered by this, and like, what does that tell me about
I
how
also
I feel
wonder
about the
about our
world?
childhoods and how they were different because I grew up in a
Right.
Catholic church and in a Catholic upbringing. Even though I'm
Mhm.
spiritual now and no longer Catholic, that's what I was brought up in. So the
Mhm.
stained glass were always saints. They were always people to keep us safe and watch over us. So the first thing I thought, they're either parts of us or angels. I saw a
Yeah.
wing right away. Well, that would be an archetype from my childhood.
Yeah. I grew up Catholic too,
Oh, that's
which is
funny.
interesting. Um, I think too, you. when you called it that it looked like a church, I always see this as a stage.
Oh, I like that.
So
Like Shakespeare.
yeah, so I think that adds to its um
And to see it as a stage would make sense of judging because when we're
yeah,
on a stage, there's a critic.
there's a lot more vulnerability to it. And
Yes.
talking about it as a sacred space, talking about it as her like sacred space and like that has added a lot more ease for me in looking at it.
I can
Once we noticed the
totally.
birds, because I saw them as neckties and collared shirts,
Yeah,
the
I thought they
birds.
were wings, but now that you say they're birds, it would make sense it was a stage. It
Yeah,
makes sense that it's in and out.
yeah,
I can see that.
yeah. It's fascinating.
It could be, and then the waking up makes sense, right? Like the
Hmm.
space that is awake. It's hard to say what the play was about, but
Yeah,
now you think it's Shakespeare. Like there's like Midsummer Night's Dream, right?
yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. Well, I definitely see now more why you chose this one because those natural elements, the ease, the breath, the lightness, and once you started talking about the different elements, I started looking for them because it has the water element because it was literally made from water. The air feels like it's present um,
The
in her
open space.
being.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it looks like you could just that she is made of air, that she actually isn't solid. And then the earth elements of the flowers and that sort of now I'm like those columns could be tree trunks, but I don't see any fire. But
I was just talking today. I did a coaching call and I was talking about I really struggle to bring fire into my environment because I
yeah.
am fire. And so
Oh.
when like it's like fast. So I'll bring orange in, I'll bring pink in. I will hardly ever bring red in. So when I see like red behind you, I laugh because you're much more earthy and much more grounded and centered. So fire would need to keep you moving. Like I
Yeah.
don't need to keep moving. I need somebody to remind me to just calm down, calm down and connect.
Yeah, but
So
I really think about it too, because I think about the parts of my house that I really love they're more energetic. They're more like bright colors and patterns and different things. It's probably because I'm seeking that sort of that energy that I do naturally have some energy like in my mind, but like physically I'm very calm of a person.
right. So my living room is my favorite place. It is blue. It is all water elements and trees. So, so because that's where I calm down and relax.
Well, we live in this world where everyone seems to want the same design in their house, especially in my neighborhood. Every house I go into,
Oh,
you know exactly what you're gonna see.
yeah.
In suburban Texas, we're gonna see some wooden signs with words painted on them. We're gonna see some, we're gonna see a lot of like farmhouse elements. We're gonna see a lot of gray and white. Um, and I love your perspective that it's really about figuring out who you are, what energy you need, and what you want to bring in.
And giving yourself permission to change. And when I was talking to Megan, Megan really follows the moon and the
Hmm.
signs, and she's very dynamic. So, what she needs today is not what she's going to need tomorrow. I said it would be interesting for us to see, especially in your workspace, what you need in a full moon time versus what you need,
Oh,
right? Like because you follow that. So she understands that. And she was like, "Yeah, that could be fun." And then another coach is a designer also and is redoing her office. And she's like, "I don't have any fire in my office." And I said, "Well, but you are all excited that your business is organically cultivating itself. So you don't want fire. Because for
mm,
you, fire feels like something outside being driven. Something's driving you, and you are allowing everything to cultivate and come to you." And she's like, "You're right." And she talked about when she holds a client, she has a chair she sits in when she coaches, even though she does it virtually, where she can hold a client. She feels like it's the womb, and she won't work there. She'll only coach there. And then she has a desk where she creates and is messy. And so it's interesting, right? That's all in one room, but she has spaces of what they feel like and how she wants them to feel.
Hmm. Oh, that's fascinating. I
Yeah,
love
one of
that.
my favorite things, because we have holidays coming up, so people can try this at home. One of my favorite things is to sit in every chair around the table if you're going to have a meal with a family and see how it feels different because you look at something different.
Yeah.
So, for example, with my mom, I'll always make sure she's looking out because looking out and seeing green is calming. And if she sat where she could see the kitchen, she's a total fire type. She's gonna not sit down. She's like, you can have.
Yeah.
So it's like an interesting thing versus my dad's so calm. Like I can set him to see complete chaos because he's not even gonna register. He's gonna be like, not my gig. So, so it's fun to kind of do those kinds of things. And then you start to see energy and how people react and interact, and it's fun.
That's fascinating. I now I'm thinking about where we sit at the family table, and we let the kids just insisted on these two particular seats, and then my husband and I were like, that upset us because we wanted to sit in their one of their seats, and so no one's really only the kids are actually happy with their seats, but I am the one that looks out at the kitchen instead of looking out the window. Um, but I liked that. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, what would it be like if I ate my dinner with the mess of the meal that I just prepared behind me?
Yeah, it's just fun. It's fun to change it up. It's fun. I tell
Yeah,
people, like, if they have a square table, I'm like, let's make it a diamond. So then nobody can sit at the same place.
yeah,
So it's just fun. I'm always like, just experiment. That's how you start feeling like, oh, I like how this feels, or ooh, I don't like how this feels. And you may love how it feels, and then all of a sudden it not feel right. And
yeah,
that's okay too. You have to give yourself permission to go through. Sometimes you quit noticing, and that means you're now just in habit. So now your surroundings are probably going to start piling up. You're going to get clutter because you have just taken your awareness away from how do I want to feel and how am I feeling in that differentiation.
yeah. And that's what I love too about this, the figure in this painting is that, she is in an environment, her eyes are closed, but she's so at peace, but it's
Mm.
not like I don't get the feeling that she is unaware of, which goes against the fact that they're judging because she just does not at all look like they're judging her. But that she is just so in tune with how she feels and how she wants to feel
Yeah, I
in
felt
the
like she's
world.
in complete alignment with her flow. That's what
Yeah,
attracts. Like
yeah.
I love when I have that space, I'm in alignment with my flow. It just feels so good.
Yep.
It never lasts long enough.
And that's when your fire comes out. You're just like, "Whoa." But
And
it's
then it goes, I just blew it up.
well, it makes me think too that I think that so much of the like self-development world and um the world, and I don't know, maybe it's just the self-development world that's just, or maybe the spirituality world that's like you have to aspire to this feeling of peace and this feeling of zen, and 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 then we're seeing that in this painting, but also like what you're saying is like you can use your environment to bring you into lots of different types of feelings, into energy, and then that's okay. And for some reason it's like completely antithesis to what this painting is, I think, but um there feels like freedom and permission in that.
I feel like freedom and permission. Yes.
Yeah,
And I feel like sometimes as women, we have to give ourselves permission. Like we're looking for validation and permission outside ourselves. And I just feel like she gave herself permission. Like I give
yeah,
myself permission to flow. I mean, she's
yeah.
all puffy. She's all, like, I don't know.
I love
I
it.
just feel like she's in her element and
Hmm.
she take care.
Oh, okay. So we are kind of coming up on, I don't know, 50 minutes or so. We've been talking. I didn't write down when we started. But what else is there that you're noticing that has been left unsaid? Anything?
Um, I don't think so. think we did a good job covering it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this. I never, come into these with any sort of preparation. I mean, like I pick the artwork, but I don't want to spend too much time with it because I just want to see what happens. And I love how you allowed me to see things in this artwork that I hadn't seen before. And I have actually seen this one many times because this one is in our membership site. We have a lesson plan on this in our first
Oh,
grader. I don't think I wrote this lesson, but I have, read the lesson and, we've used it many times and I've looked at it many times, but I've never looked at it as closely as I have with you. So I really appreciate what you have brought to my understanding of this. So that was
I
fun.
love we get to bring our own understanding and our own perspective. That's
Indeed.
what I always tell people about their spaces. Like, this
Yeah.
is yours.
Hmm. So how can someone work with you if they've just really you've piqued their interest and they want your consulting services? What should they do?
A Design Discovery is my website, so they can go there and we'll have that in the link. And you just set up some discovery call. I always want us to be a fit, so it's a free discovery call for us to figure out what is going to help you. If it's not me, I usually know someone that is the perfect fit for what you're looking to go to. You can follow me on social media at Annette Stahl. And so Facebook is really, I do Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome.
Every day you can get design ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of them from watching your Facebook. So if they were to book a call, is it more like you're creating designs for them, or is it more like you give them general vibes and you just like a
It
conversation?
all
What does it
depends
look
on what
like?
they need. So, like right now, I can do a drafting. So, I draft and do blueprints. So, I'm doing an old barn and helping someone do that virtually. Sometimes it is coaching. So, it means here's how my life is and here's what's not working. And I don't know what to do. And so, we Zoom or we FaceTime your space. And sometimes we don't want to talk about our feelings. Sometimes we're just over it. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's easier to clean something than to talk about our feelings, and it does the same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I deal with lots of engineers and finance people because they don't really want to talk about feelings, but they really want a house that looks awesome and feels like them and is a place to replenish. So I'll work with them that way. Um, because it's muck, usually my programs are going to be 3 months to 7 months. Because if we only do a few sessions, you go, oh, I have all these insights, but you don't do anything.
Yeah.
You just had a nice thought and it passes. You don't actually do the integration. So I feel like you always have to, I'm always there for you to get you through the integration so that you can actually see it come to life. So that's why when we talk about programs, they're 3 to 7 months. Unless you're just looking for a plan, then that's kind of quick.
Yeah. Awesome. And I can vouch for Annette's work because I was in a session she led and she was talking to us about feng shui and I, took the Bagua map and I put it over my office and I looked at I hadn't had any enrollees for my program yet. And I think it had been open a couple days. And I saw the corner of my office that was finances was a chair just covered in stuff. And then, so in the middle of the session, I'm still listening, but I just walk over the office chair or the chair in the corner. I cleaned it all up. And then 30 minutes later, I got my first sale. So I was like, oh, it
It's
works.
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. And you can go as
Yeah.
deep as you want or as little as you want, and there's no
Yeah.
judgment. There are
Yeah.
times we just need to skim the surface and get some things flowing, and we'll go deep later. Totally fine. Non-judgment is the biggest feedback I get, is what I give. Lots of love, lots of laughs, and zero judgment. That
Awesome.
is my biggest feedback.
Love it. So good. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me today. We'll put all your links in the show notes. Um, but yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was fun. I always love spending time with you.
Indeed. All right, that was my conversation with Annette Stahl about Mysterious Garden by Margaret MacDonald McIntosh. And in our interview, Annette mentioned Megan when she was talking about an example of bringing the full moon vibes into your space. And I just wanted to point out that the Megan that she's talking about is Megan Winkler, and Megan Winkler will be on the podcast next week. So stay tuned for the next episode to learn more about Megan's full moon witchy vibes and how she integrates that with business. So looking forward to our discussion. If you want to have an art discussion on art in self, please send me an email, cindy@artclasscurator.com. I am looking for new and exciting and passionate and creative and insightful people to have these amazing conversations with. And if you're listening to this, I know that's you. So send me an email. Can't wait to hear from you. I will see you all next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Art and Self. And if you loved what you heard, please consider leaving me a rating or a review on iTunes. And share this episode with one friend who you know needs to hear what we talked about today. You will find links to the artworks that we discuss over at the show notes, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Cindy Needs Art. Thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful week. I'll see you next time.